So here's the introduction to our final project for this year, Fun with Engineering. So you have a choice between one of 5 different subject matters. The first one is time-based art, which could be kinetic, or it could be shindogus, which is the type of unuseless invention, or cause and effect, which is a chain reaction thing, or structural engineering, or civil engineering. And that covers a lot of different bases. When looking at kinetic art, one always begins with the French-Swiss artist Jean Tinguely and his whimsical machines. A number of Tinguely's machines functioned as drawing devices or art makers, which is one of the options that you might take on in this project. Rebecca Horn is also well known for her kinetic art and her drawing machines, and this is one of her painting devices. Here are a few videos of Jean Tinguely's machines. A former student of mine, Andrew Chartier, made art-making devices that were triggered by the wind, the sun, and other natural phenomena. This device would measure the speed of the wind and translate the data into a drawing machine. Some of Andrew's work we would have seen last semester. And here's the mechanism that translated the data into drawings. And the faster the wind went, the faster this device would draw.
À un moment donné. De cette façon-là.
This is a little drawing machine of Andrew's where it would draw faster and faster depending on whether or not the sun was shining. His pluviophone is a device that would actually capture rain and translate it into music. This is a mechanical duck called the pH duck, created by an artist named Andrew Chartier, that would go out into the lake and record and report back on different levels of acid rain.
Patrouille locale des pluies acides. Citoyens et citoyennes, votre attention s'il vous plaît. Zone écologique sensible. Local patrol for acid rain. Dear citizens, your attention please. Sensitive ecological zone. Le pH est au-dessus de 5.6. Acidité normale. pH level is over 5.6. Acidity is normal.
This is an artwork called Open Tuning by Stephen Kelly, and it is a number of sound and mechanical devices that react to data being sent in from a buoy out in the waves near Halifax. Here you can see some of the elements in motion. and the speakers that relay some of the sounds that are created through that data. We will also watch a video of his project. Here are some links to a couple of Stephen Kelly's works. This is a planting device that I once made called Sown Machine, shown in Pasadena, that would react to the movements of viewers through motion sensors, turning the work on and off and setting it up and down that railing, creating the patterns of movement in the seeds that would grow on that bed of soil. The next two videos are time-based kinetic works. The first is a chair that has camouflage butterflies flapping, and it speaks about women in science. And the second video is a model of Venice that rises and lowers beneath the water. It's talking about the rising sea levels and Venice being constantly flooded and potentially disappearing. The next short video is of a light-based installation by Mona Hatoum called Light Sentence. And what it is, it's a light bulb that just swings very slightly between these cages. When you're in this installation, you can feel a real disorientation with space. This is an artwork made by a former student of mine, Trevor, and it was this tree cutter that was made out of motorcycle, chainsaw, and flamethrower. And it was really funny when we turned it on for the critique. He didn't know how to turn it off, so we had to wait for it to run out of gas. It would have been too dangerous to kind of get in there and turn it off. Olafur Eliasson did a project where he took chunks of a glacier and displayed them and let the viewers come in and interact with them as they melted. So the viewers got to put their hand on ice that may be several thousand years old. So this would be an audience member staring deep into the past. Here's a work by Olafur Eliasson, which I think we've seen before, where he uses steam to create frost in various places, in this case in the surrounding trees. In the next few installations, we see how he used steam to create various icicles on structures. Here's the interior of one of those structures. It plays very nicely with the light. And here's one of his ice domes. Here we'll look at a few examples of some performance art that leave a residue or a work of art afterwards. In this photo here is a picture of Betsy Damon and her project called The 7,000-Year-Old Woman. This is a work by Janine Antony called Slumber, where she recorded her EEG patterns as she was sleeping and then transmitted them to this loom. And the wave patterns of her sleeping brain were then woven into this blanket, which then she used to cover herself while sleeping. Here's a view of the overall setup of Slumber. We will now look at some other performance art. This is a work called Sumo by a former student of mine, Jocelyn Foy, where she engaged two sumo wrestlers to wrestle on this bed of clay. They were legitimate sumo wrestlers, and the performances were actually quite intense. Some wrestling bouts can last only a second or two, and some can go on for quite a while. The object is quite simple. One wrestler has to throw the other out of the ring. As the two wrestlers fought with each other, their feet left a number of imprints in the clay. Jocelyn did a number of other performances using dancers, fencers, and others. And here you can see the cast that she did with the imprints of the sumo wrestlers fighting. They were cast in a kind of silicone foam rubber. And she employed a number of different dancers. In this case, it was a jingle dancer who had been dancing in a powwow on the Cal State campus. And these are some dancers that she used in another one of her performance works. And this was the imprint from dancers doing ballet. You can see their footprints going on point. Heather Hansen is a dancer who does these performances where she draws these quite large drawings in front of an audience as she dances. And she uses both her hands and her feet and the rest of her body to create these quite large drawings, which are then the residual of the artwork. One of your options might be to make a stop-action animation or similar video. The following video is a claymation by the student Shanae Jacquard. You can also, of course, do something like a music video if you have the technical capabilities. There's a group in Japan called the Shindogu Society where they focus on making unuseless inventions. These are a play on consumer items that sometimes point out how useless certain inventions actually are. One of the stipulations is they cannot be commercially successful as an object. Here you can see some nice multitasking gloves. Some might actually be quite useful, such as this device for helping somebody scratch an itchy spot on your back. Or something if you want to put your pets to work, if they're just running around the house a lot, they can dust your floors. If you need something like a spare hand, if your other hand is busy for doing things like picking at your teeth. Or if you're young and going on a date and you're still too nervous to hold hands, you could bring a spare arm and a spare hand. Here are a couple of inventions for men. The one on the left is for men who might be going bald but don't want to wear a toupee or a comb over, and so they just need to look through this ring of hair in the mirror and get a great burst of confidence in the morning. And the second invention lets Dad experience the joys of motherhood. This is a really nice device. If you don't want to get your teeth dirty, you can just put teeth caps on. Here's a couple of excellent gardening tools. The one on the left is a great tool for watering multiple plants at the same time. And the other is a very handy Swiss Army gardening tool where you have every single digging tool you can think of blended into one. And after all that hard day's gardening, if you need a little bit of extra oxygen, you can plug into this oxygenator with a fern in it. If you don't feel like carrying around a wallet, you can have a special tide to carry your stuff for you. Playing golf and drying your laundry at the same time. It would go good with this one where you can do your laundry as you walk. Here's a handy sleeping device if you take a lot of long subway rides. And here's an excellent tool for long, boring lectures that you can keep your eyes wide open. And I think this is my favorite one. It's a device that as you walk, you will pump up this bag. And when you need to stop and for a rest, you can sit. This is the artist Simone Giertz, who makes what she calls crappy robots. One project you might consider is something like a body extension or prosthetic to help you with creating art. Rebecca Hammett is an artist who uses the idea of the prosthetic or the body extension as a means of creating artworks. You can see her here creating wall paintings using her 6-armed painting body extension. This is an audio-based work where you could just simply sit between those two cones and hear the sound surrounding you. And these are some examples of cause and effect videos, so we will watch a couple of these. In this project with structural engineering, the idea is to use just a singular material, whether it's paper or cardboard or something else, to create some sort of engineering project. And here is formerly one of the world's largest paper planes, but it's been eclipsed by another one. This one actually flew. A different sort of project. One of my students did this one about 1,001 paper cranes. One thing you could do with engineering is to see if you could build a small bridge that could hold some very, very heavy weights like this one. Or you could make an enormous bridge just out of Lego. And quite a well-known artist made this much larger bridge entirely out of Meccano. And here's a bridge made out of toothpicks. And a whole strange city or something or other made out of toothpicks. I think there's 1 million of them or something in here. I think I showed you this structure with me sitting in the saran wrap. Here's a much larger structure made out of cling wrap or saran wrap. It fills up a large part of a museum. Along with saran or cling wrap, you could also use bubble wrap. And if anybody would be interested, you could do something that is inflatable. We have a number of fans you could use. This one you might have seen. It was what some other students did for this project. It was actually a great big canopy made out of plastic bags. And you might have also seen this one. One of my students made an entire forest just out of cardboard boxes. And this is a work by Zhang Huan made entirely out of ash that was collected in monasteries in China. It was the ash from incense. And this is quite large. It's about 3 meters high. You could go into a different type of engineering, such as civic, geographical, or planetary engineering, where you design large civic or even planetary structures. A friend of mine, actually a former student from California, likes to make cities out of paper. Here's a close-up of one of his cities. Here's 2 cities made by the artist Chris Burden. He's also the one who made that bridge out of Meccano. And Chris Burden actually designed a few planetoids, small ones. Here's another one of his planets. One artist I knew captured these asteroids with a long-range photograph. I think it just looks like a potato. The next option is the impossible project. For this assignment, you would design a structure or a project that could not actually be physically built. You would create the project through documentation as if it did exist. You can use any media you like. It could be in the digital realm, it could be Photoshop, it could be CGI animation. You might even do it through literature, such as writing a story about your impossible project, or a combination of any of the aforementioned media. A number of architects have used this technique of the impossible project to design bits of architecture that would be impossible to build, but still has the suggestibility of maybe being possible. This would be an example of a bridge that crosses the Atlantic Ocean. Here we have a bridge that actually made it all the way to the moon. One type of structure that many sci-fi writers have written about is the Dyson sphere, which is a spherical structure that has roughly the same circumference as the orbit of the Earth. And the idea was to capture all of the sun's energy and use it in this enormous kind of planetary surface. The Dyson sphere actually showed up in one of the Star Trek series.